Welcome, everyone. You're watching In the Crosshairs. I'm your host, Raquel Okyay, and my special guest today is Michael Marshall. Michael Marshall is one of the founding members of Liberty First Foundation. So he's going to talk about his group, how it got started, what they are doing politically, nationally, locally, to further the liberty movement, which is, you know, the graph I get from the website. Very good website. And also, I'm so happy to announce that I'm going to be a contributing writer as well. And you all focus a lot on Second Amendment. I'm really happy about that. So I'm very happy to contribute to your website. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy that you're having this interview with me today.
Awesome. So tell me how Liberty First Foundation got started.
Basically, Liberty First Foundation got started because several of us got together. There's a group of 5 of us that are very active in the organization. And we got started because we were tired of always seeing how these politicians were treading all over our Second Amendment rights. We were tired of all the misinformation that was being put out there to the general public. And people are uneducated about firearms. They really do not understand. The politicians put along these storylines that the AR-15 is a rifle that is capable of shooting a gazillion rounds and destroying tanks and everything else, and it was just ridiculous what was being put out there. So we started an organization as a grassroots effort to start educating people more about what firearms are, how gun owners are, and to counter a lot of the misinformation that's out there.
You know, that's part of the reason why I started this program as well, which is I'm on my 30th episode, and I broadcast every Wednesday at 1 p.m. And awesome. That's with TLBTV.com. And what I also wanted to do was combat the onslaught. You know, it's an onslaught anti-Second Amendment group out there. I mean, in the sense that, you know, with the misinformation, they're so loud and they seem so powerful, and they feel, you know, they get invested into the local television stations or the local media, and people think, you know, they know what they're talking about. We have to save lives, you know, and in fact, you know, it's the opposite, you know, my opinion. You know, guns save lives, right? Guns are, you know, as a protective measure, it is our natural right, you know, to be able to defend ourselves. And the last thing that I want is the guns in the criminals' hands and not the law-abiding. So, you know, my opinion, gun control laws, all they do is penalize law-abiding citizens. Criminals are going to go get guns and do bad things. I don't like it, but they're going to do it. Happy to, you know, put forth that pro-Second Amendment.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, okay? Criminal element. Okay, it looks like we froze up a little bit.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. The criminal element will always gain access to firearms. You there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, the criminal element's always going to have access to firearms, regardless of whether they are out there stealing them from people or they are making them on their own. Making a basic firearm is extremely simple. Okay, you go to a hardware store, you grab a few pieces of pipe, and now all of a sudden you got a shotgun that you put together really quickly. Excuse my dog, she's seeing something.
You have a dog, I have birds. We're the nature show.
Exactly.
We love animals. We're animal lovers.
Exactly. I totally believe that our most basic right, a right that predates our right to free speech, is our right to survival, our right to self-protection. If you go back into our history, back when we were cavemen living on the savannah and on the steppes and everywhere else, we were the hunted. Okay, we were the prey for the top predators. We had to change that, and how that was changed is through weapons, and that has evolved over time into what you see out there today in the market. Just because we have evolved and the weapons have evolved does not mean that we still do not need those same levels of protection. If we do not have the protection, then we go back to being the prey. And once you become prey, then you're going to be lunch for somebody, okay? Whether it's a criminal element or whatever. And yes, I fully support all of our law enforcement and all of our military throughout the United States. In fact, I work directly with a lot of our public safety officials in my career. The truth of the matter is, regardless of how much they try, they cannot be everywhere at all times. Okay? So 95% of the time, when they are going on a scene, especially when there's a violent crime or violent action, they're going there to draw a talk out line. They aren't going there to stop the event from happening. They're a reactive force. They're not a proactive force. The only way that we can be proactive is by us having the firearms available to protect us against the elements that wish to do us harm, regardless of whether that is a foreign government that's wishing to invade our country, or if it's the thug that's trying to take our valuables. It doesn't matter. We still have to have the means to be able to protect ourselves, because by the time law enforcement and government officials arrive, it's too late.
That's exactly right, and the statistics show that. So a 911 call, it's not likely that a crime is going to be caught in the action from a 911 call. It's what the likelihood is that the police show up after it has happened. It's not likely that they actually catch the person committing the crime. Individuals, we have to defense, but yourself. Law enforcement is the second line of defense. So sure, you're in something's going wrong, you're going to call 911, but that's only going to go too far. They're not going to get there in time, just like you said. Exactly. And the data shows that too. I mean, it's just virtually impossible. I mean, if there's a crime in action, the police officers are not, sitting in your lawn. Okay, we don't do that. So it's so important to be able to be your own first line of defense. And, I think you're spot on with that. And that's something that I guess the anti-gunners, I don't know how they don't, understand that, if you can't protect yourself, how can you rely on anybody else 10 miles away to protect you? It's impossible.
Well,
because it'd be right there.
It is. It's absolutely impossible. The only way that can happen is if we go to a full police state, okay, where we have law enforcement on every corner. And even then, they can't still be right there to stop an action in progress. It's impossible.
It is.
Okay, and I don't care. You're not going to get rid of every weapon that's out there. Okay, if you do, you have to get rid of cars. You've got to get rid of rocks. You've got to get rid of boards. Anything can be used as a weapon, and anything in the hands of the wrong individual can become a destructive tool.
That's
it
right.
doesn't matter if it's a gun or if it's a 2x4. Okay, how many people have been bludgeoned to death by a 2x4? But yet, there is no outcry about banning 2x4s because we have to have those to build our houses. Okay? People don't see firearms or guns in the same light. They don't see them as useful. We've got to change. Firearms are extremely useful. If they weren't, law enforcement wouldn't be carrying them. Okay? And the same weapons that they are trying to ban are the same exact weapons that they're putting in the hands of our law enforcement in order to protect us. And God forbid that we have some government agency that gets in there and decides that they do want to start up a tyranny or a tyrannical government. How are we going to stop that or prevent it? And we've seen it throughout history, all the way throughout history, where you've had different organizations come in, they have a coup, and now all of a sudden you go from a free society to one where you are no longer free, and your freedom has been completely suppressed. And if you don't submit to their rule, you're shot. Okay, you're executed, you're hung, you're beheaded, whatever.
Yeah, you don't have a fighting chance.
You got elements in this.
You can't go to a gunfight with a knife.
Exactly. You can't.
Yeah. You're gonna lose. You're definitely gonna lose.
I have seen some videos of this one guy. Actually, I've seen some videos of this one guy that is very effective. But we have elements in this world, and I'm not against Muslims, but there is a segment of the Muslim religion, the Islamic religion, that are radicalized, and they want death to all Christians. Okay, and they are doing their level best to ensure that happens. We hear on the reports all the time on the news about beheadings happening in the Middle East. Well, if we do not have the means to protect ourselves here in the United States, how are we going to prevent that from starting to happen in the United States?
That's exactly right. We have to have the capacity to defend ourselves against anybody. So it could be any invader. You're your first defense. You know, it's the only way it could be. I have a question for you, Michael. I was putting out lawn signs yesterday for the governor's candidate in Florida that I'm supporting, the Reform Party candidate, Darcy Richardson. And I had a travel companion who's also a Reform Party member, except him and I are, you know, really far apart on ideology. We had a very interesting conversation. And we talked about the Second Amendment. Okay, and he, you know, it seemed like his biggest argument was, you know, what do you need AR-15s for? You know, what good purpose, you know, do people have? Too many people get killed. So many people get killed by guns. You know, I don't want to ban them, he says. I don't want to ban them. He said, I just think, you know, we can restrict them so that these crazy firearms we don't need are not out there, and also we restrict everybody. You know, he was clear on this point. Everybody who has a mental problem. I don't know who determines that, though, right? Who determines everyone? Everyone. Exactly. You know, it's sort of a regular response you and I probably hear often. So I want to know what you would say to him. What would you say to him, Michael, about the AR-15? Nobody and all crazy people should be banned from being able to purchase a firearm.
Okay, first off, the AR-15 is one of the most popular home defense weapons there is out on the market today. Yeah. More people own an AR-15 than own shotguns. Is my first thing. Okay, so they are an extremely popular weapon for home defense. The second thing is because of their high rate of fire, okay, and they do have a relatively high rate of fire being that they are a semi-automatic weapon. They aren't a bazillion rounds like some of the congressmen that are pushing for gun control would like you to believe. But they do have a high rate of fire. One of the biggest things I can think of is in 1992 during the LA riots, Koreatown in LA was able to defend their stores and their shops. They were one of the few places in LA that were relatively unscarred by the LA riots. Why? Because the people that were protecting their businesses, their livelihoods, and so forth had an AR-15. They had what they are classifying as quote-unquote assault rifles. Okay, So as a result, they were able to counter a threat of multiple people that were wishing to do them harm. They were wishing to destroy their stores, wishing to destroy themselves, their homes, harm the individuals. Okay. The only chance they had was the fact that they did have a semi-automatic rifle that was capable of firing multiple rounds in a short period of time. If we would have limited the magazine capacities and had those been bolt action weapons, I don't think we would have seen the same results as we saw during those riots. The next thing is in Katrina, when they're going around actually taking away these rifles and taking away guns from the general population, we saw an exponential increase of the amount of people that were being, businesses being looted, people being harmed, and so forth. Okay, when we go into a situation where we have a tragedy or a natural disaster such as Katrina, everybody goes into a self-defense, self-protection, self-preservation mode.
It's very natural. It's very natural to do that, and it's your first line of protection.
Okay.
Nobody's going to come, no one's going to be there with you. Like you have to be responsible enough. And sometimes, if you choose to protect yourself with other means, that's kind of up to you. So I don't think you and I or neither one of us are saying, hey, if you don't want it. We think the firearm is the best method to be able to protect yourself in these types of emergencies that do occur. Right. But if the listener or the viewer feels that the firearm may not be their choice, okay, just don't take away mine.
Right. Okay. Nobody's wanting to infringe on anybody's rights on this side, okay, that are approach Second Amendment. You have the right to not have a firearm in your home. You have the right to rely upon law enforcement and other government agencies to attempt to protect you. Okay, you have that right, but I have the right to defend myself by any means necessary against any presence that wishes to do me harm. Plain and simple. And another thing on the Second Amendment that a lot of people do not understand is the Second Amendment isn't just about, well, it is about self-protection. Okay, but a lot of people try to say, well, the Second Amendment is just put there to protect hunting and hunters. No, it wasn't. Okay, yes, we need firearms to be able to gain food and so forth, especially in the event that our economy crashes and we no longer have supermarkets and so forth. We do have very bountiful game here within our borders.
Yeah.
Well, we are very blessed in that manner. But we need to take that a step further. Okay, the Second Amendment was put there because our founding fathers knew and understood that we have other threats outside of ourselves. Okay, we have at any time any government agency or government could decide that they no longer like us and that they want to destroy our way of life. It has happened. Okay. We can look at the events like 9/11, and we have enemies out there. We look in our history and we look at what happened during the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812. The only reason why we were able to counter those events and actually become a nation that is free and a guiding light to other nations that wish to be free is because our citizens had the ability to be able to protect themselves from these governments that wish to oppress us.
Yeah, and see, look how quickly, Adolf Hitler developed. I mean, it developed over years. But when he took over power, the first thing he had to do was disarm the Jews. And the reason being is that sooner or later, people start shooting back. So the government starts pulling up and willfully taking individuals, you know, taking away their freedom directly from them and removing them, they're going to start, you're armed, you're going to be like, hold on, the government's doing something wrong here. Those people are leaving and they're not coming back and we don't hear from them ever again. You know, what's happening? So, you know, for a fascist government, it was important to disarm the Jews in order to capture them and confine them, and otherwise they wouldn't have been able to do that. It's sort of that's how important it is, you know. So we don't know as Americans what the future, you know, can happen. We don't know that a despotic government can arise so easily. And we really do need that protection. Like you said, you know, it's not just about hunting. It's not just about self-protection, but it's also the idea, it's the principle of freedom. If we don't have the capacity to arm ourselves, to protect our own person and property, we don't have any power. You know, we're like sitting ducks.
Right.
I wanted to tell you something about, you mentioned Katrina. People take their rights very seriously. Second Amendment, you know, the Second Amendment right is a civil right. You know, it's just as important as any other right. And in St. Tammany Parish during Katrina, which is a county just outside of NOLA, but they had, you know, the whole area, you know, was right. hit. And this particular sheriff, his name is Jack Strain. He's not a sheriff anymore. He was elected out, and he's under suspicion for federal indictment on other cases. But he you know, told his deputies go out there and disarm everybody, you know, in the county. So they're like, I mean, could you imagine being in your own home and there's like a disaster going on and you're like getting your stuff together and you're like protecting yourself and you got your firearms ready, you know, because you don't know if looters are going to go, you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And then you're like, you know, I'm a police officer, give me your guns. You know, what? You know, I would be like, what? You can't take my guns. You know, I mean, imagine being in that situation. Okay, so this is what was going on in St. Tammany Parish, and what the result was that there was a lawsuit filed on the federal level for violation of the Second Amendment rights, and district court judge severely admonished the sheriff. Mm-hmm. And the exact ruling was something like, not only are you not allowed to confiscate guns during an emergency, but you're not allowed to confiscate guns ever. Right. Never again. You're not allowed. I mean, the judge was, you know, it was hardcore. It's hardcore. Win. You know, so, you know, I want the public to know that would have been such a scary situation for someone like me. That if there was some kind of emergency, and even if it was riots. Right. Someone wants to make a riot. I mean, those things are dangerous. You know, people are setting fires. They're breaking through windows. They're armed. They may be armed, right? Because criminals can be armed. You never know, you know. And sort of like wanting to prepare for whatever emergency disaster is coming your way, and you know, police coming in and taking your guns. This is really serious. It's almost like you have something to say. You have an opinion. You have an objection about, you know, someone in public office, say, for instance. Right. So you go to your public square and you want to share your information with the public. And the police come over and put a big piece of scotch tape over your mouth. That's the equivalent.
Well, exactly. Okay. Yeah. Our rights are fundamental. Okay. They weren't granted because the founding fathers decided to write the Constitution. Okay. Those are rights that we had that predate the Constitution by many, many, many millennia. Okay, they're rights that have always been in existence. And just because somebody decides to oppress those rights doesn't mean that you don't have those rights. It just means that you are no longer able to practice those rights. And one of the things that I look at very seriously is there are the very first two amendments of the Bill of Rights are probably the most critical parts of the Constitution. One is the First Amendment. The First Amendment is our voice, okay? It is our bark, so to speak. The Second Amendment is our teeth, okay? The Second Amendment gives the citizen, not the military, not the militias, not government. The Second Amendment gives the citizen the ability to enforce every other part of the Constitution.
Yes, right, because it's precisely. Because you can speak all you want. I mean, if you're given the, if we have God-given right to speak without hypocrisy. So we don't want some entity, some person coming in and saying, yeah, you're not allowed to say that.
Right.
To me, that's your freedom. It's very important, right? The First and Second Amendment, that is your freedom. If you don't have that, you got a piece of tape over your mouth.
Right.
And then the next place they go is in your mind. You can't think that, would be the next step. So then you're an absolute slave. You're absolute slave to your government if that happens. And it's the same thing with the second. And when they come and they come with their pieces of tape. And well, you've got your Second Amendment rights. And you're like, you're not taking away my tape.
Right.
You're not taping me up. You are not taping, because you're able to defend yourself.
Right.
It goes together. That's a very good point. It actually goes together, because you can't have one. You cannot have the First Amendment without the Second Amendment, because what stops them from taping your mouth? You can't defend yourself. Yeah, they have firearms.
Well, that's it. That's just it. Okay, if you look at any of the gun restrictions that are currently on the law books, almost all of them have an exception put in them. Okay, right there is a violation of the 14th Amendment. Once they put that exception in, okay, that exception is always except for law enforcement and military personnel.
Yeah, it's equal protection under the law. Actually, it's a violation of equal protection because they have more rights than you.
Right.
And that's not supposed to happen.
Exactly.
Under the Constitution.
Okay. A law enforcement officer is no different than I am. Okay.
Exactly.
So why should they have more protection? Yeah, I admit they go in front of harm's way all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. But in my job, part of my job responsibility is maintaining public safety radio communication systems. I go to remote locations at all times in the course of my job. These remote locations are the core of public safety communications. Now, if a bad character decided that they wanted to disrupt public safety communications, they could go to one of these sites and sabotage it. I go up there responding to a call out. I go up there, and now, in order to prevent somebody from repairing it and getting communications back up, they've got bad people there. I go up there, and I'm defenseless. So now I cannot do my job. I'm probably dead because I wasn't able to defend myself. And we no longer have public safety communications. And now this bad actors, these people that are a threat to the United States and people of the United States, are able to subvert and be able to start taking over things. Okay.
Yeah, you have to have a means of, I just don't get. I don't understand that anti-gunners and their inability to grasp this idea that that the defense level is on so many different levels. Your own personal protection and it's just, even the courts are the whole entire American way that we're, based on freedom. We're a free country. That's why people from around the world are dying to come here and they want to come to America. It's because we are free. Why on earth would anybody want to take that away from us? Like, why do Americans, they go out there and they say, we want to take away your freedom. We don't want you to have, we want to keep, we think, this is going to keep us safe. I mean, okay, sometimes I think it's more motivated from a bigger objective. Sometimes I think it's people who just, they really do want the gun bans. They want the tyranny. They're the ones who want to do this. Or is it just people that are, you know, misinformed? They don't get the idea of freedom. I can't wrap my head around it.
I can't necessarily wrap my head around it either, but I know with dealing with this a lot, okay? And I have some family members that are opposite viewpoints of what I am, as far as that goes. I also know a lot of people. I've lived in 16 different states, so I've experienced a lot of cultures throughout the United States. And as a result, I'm able to kind of understand a little more of how different people think. That doesn't necessarily mean I agree with how they think, but I can understand, I can almost put myself in their shoes. And honestly, what I think is at the lowest level, not at the political level, but at the lowest level, a lot of these people that are pro-gun, because of all the misinformation they've received, honestly believe that the best course of action is to restrict these firearms. Okay? And they believe that they need to be solely dependent upon government. And if we actually look, there is a segment of our population that believes that the answer to everything is government. I am just the opposite. I believe the answer lies with the individual. Okay? And our strength comes from the individual. It doesn't come from government. I think government makes us weaker. Our individuality is what gives us our strength. Our individuality is what gives us our diversity in this country. It isn't because we all fall under a central government. Okay? Our power comes from unique individuals like yourself and like myself. It comes from a broad range of thoughts and processes. Another thing,
government never gets it right. You know, sometimes they have good intentions, but they always, you know, it's too collective. And then it becomes really burdensome and comes out of control. But when you're relying on the individual or local, you know, keep it all down to the individual. We are the strength of America, and not the government. They tend to get it wrong, and we see that in our past. You know, and I think the founders had in their mind that the government was supposed to be small. It, you know, wasn't supposed to be so burdensome. It wasn't supposed to be so rich. Collect so much of our money to redistribute it, which they do. I don't think it was ever meant to be like that, Michael.
No, it wasn't. Okay, and that was one of the biggest things. Our government knew, or our founding fathers knew, the biggest threat to freedom was the government. Okay, plain and simple. So as a result, they came up with the Constitution. Okay, prior to the Constitution, we had the Articles of Confederacy, and we were a confederation of states instead of a constitutional republic or a representative republic. Now, as a confederation of states, there was a lot of freedom, and states basically did as they saw fit for each individual state. But one of the biggest drawbacks was one state would do things one way, another state would do things another way, or we'd start having restrictions by several states against one state and isolating various people. As a result, our founding fathers came together again, and this is years after the revolution happened, came together again and said, we've got to fix this. If we don't fix this, we will not make it. So they came up with a plan and devised a plan where the states could still have their freedoms, still be able to operate, where individuals had freedoms, but we could all come together as a whole in order to deal with places like Britain, or if the French came over and tried to invade us, or whoever at that time was a threat, we could deal with it. We only are able to deal with that because of the clause for the common defense. That was one of the key premises of the Constitution. Another premise of the Constitution was to limit government in such a way that our freedoms were not restricted. Okay, government was the original intent of the founding fathers was the most power was supposed to be in the hands of the individual. And as you went up through the government levels, the power became less and less. So when you were at the federal government level, they had the least amount of power. We have flip-flopped that. Now the federal government is high almighty and the ones with the most power. And as you go down, we find that we have less and less power, less and less freedoms, less and less liberty.
Yes, that's kind of shocking to me when American people are looking for more power. You know, they're looking for the government to take on even more power individual, and it really takes away from our freedom. You know, it's painful.
It is.
So, please stop. I want to get onto a different topic, Michael. I want to ask you a question about this. So there's a lot of anti-gunners out there, you know, talking about mental health issues and, you know, not, you know, removing firearms randomly from people. They do it in your state, New York, under the SAFE Act, so they can randomly, a hospital worker without any type of specialty or anything can make a phone call, you know, to Albany and let them know that this person in the hospital, we think they're a little strange, and you know, you might as well, we understand they have firearms, go get them. And they do this. They're confiscating guns in New York under the SAFE Act.
Right.
And I want to point out before you answer the question for the viewers. So in 1968, the Congress developed the Gun Control Act, and in that act, and this is sort of the law, one of the main law that allows the states, they're supposed to, you know, stay within this confine of the 1968 Gun Control Act, but then they, you know, they go far out and beyond with all the restrictions. But in the 1968 Gun Control Act, it does state that if you are determined to have you're mentally incapacitated by a judge. Okay, so a judge says this person is mentally incapacitated today, now, since 1968, you cannot get a firearm.
Right.
You know, we've dealt with this issue, right? So, I mean, and I think it's fair, because I certainly wouldn't want someone, you know, who had an axe to grind to make maybe not being well enough to purchase a firearm, and then all of a sudden now my firearms are confiscated. That's a complete violation of my rights. So I think it's fair. Now, at the same time, I don't want, you know, dangerous, violent, mentally incapacitated people to have firearms. I can agree with that. But I want due process at the same time. So I don't think a simple accusation can warrant something like that. Now, if you want to, you know, make a complaint, something happened, have your to a judge, now we're talking. So at least the accused, you know, has an opportunity to present their side. Well, no, this didn't happen, or let me impeach their evidence, or there is no evidence. Now a judge gets to decide, you know what, that person shouldn't, you know, shouldn't have their rights denied. I don't know why, you know, I think I think we already have those laws. So what do you think about that mantra out there about like disarming anybody who might be determined to be crazy?
Okay, I'm going to make a question as a statement. Okay.
Okay.
First off, why does somebody that quote unquote has a mental deficiency have any less rights than I do? Why are they unable to have the ability to protect themselves? Okay. Just because you may not have the same mindset as I do, okay, doesn't mean that your right should be any less. Okay. Yeah, we've got crazy people out there all over the place. But if we are actually of a mindset of we are our own best protection, and we are of the mindset that we are the first line of defense, regardless of whether a person has a mental deficiency or a mental incapacity, we are able to protect ourselves against that threat. Okay. It is only when we have restrictions on our laws already and restriction upon our rights and oppression of our rights that we have to enact laws that single out individuals and say, you cannot have a gun or you can't have one. Okay. The biggest part of gun control was actually as a method of oppressing African Americans or the blacks. Okay. And that was the whole premise behind a lot of gun control that we still currently have in the United States today, was an oppressive system. Okay. They did not want blacks to be able to stand up for themselves. Well, we have actually distorted that and transitioned that to where the only way we can be safe is by taking these guns away. No, that is not the case. Okay. Just because that is the party line on the people that want to take away our guns is that's the only way to be safe. It isn't. The only way to be safe is to be able to defend yourself against any and all threats that may threaten your life. The first line of defense in a national security situation is the individual. It is not the government. So in order to have national security, we must first have individual security. That is the only way that we can. So to get back to your topic of, or your question of mental health issues and so forth, I believe these red flag laws that are popping up all over the United States, and including in my states where they currently have 5 of them that have been proposed, they are a direct violation of the due process system. They are a direct violation of individuals' rights to property ownership. They're on so many levels, they violate so many different people's rights. If an individual is such a threat to society that they cannot be trusted to have a weapon, then that individual should be institutionalized, for not only for the safety of the public, but for their own safety. Okay?
That makes a whole lot of sense.
Exactly.
You're a smart guy, Michael. I mean, that's perfect. It's true, because we're not going to take away their First Amendment rights.
Right.
As they might have a mental disability, we're not going to take away their right to due process. But we're expected to take away their right to defend themselves. And then just the idea that we have the right to defend, any of us have the right to defend ourselves. That's our first defense anyway.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very, very interesting. I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to repeat what you said.
Okay, that is my premise. Okay, I don't care. Even, and I'm actually probably one of the few that think this way. But even a felon, once they have served their debt to society, even a felon has the right.
I agree with that. I do think felons also should be able to regain their property. It's a property right? They're regaining their property right. They paid their dues, and they should be able to be get firearms, not banned for life. Or, it's a trick. So even if you are a convicted felon, you want to get your firearms back, you pay a lot of money. So maybe you have money. You pay a lot of money, and then all of a sudden, bingo, you get it back. It's not equal protection of the law at all, and it's denying your property rights.
No, right. It's denying property rights. It's denying the ability of being able to defend yourself. Okay? Yeah, you did something wrong. Okay? And I don't care what that wrong item is. I mean, yeah, there's varying levels of wrongness. so to speak. If we go from a purely biblical standpoint, there isn't. But as our society has grown, we have said, okay, yeah, if you do this, it's only this bad. But you do this, it's really bad. So you really got.
Right.
Okay. We have taken upon ourselves to rate the level of evil in our society. But the point is evil is evil, regardless of what it is. Okay. I don't even know where I was going. I was going down a rabbit hole for that one. But back to the premise of felons. Okay. A judge said at their trial, when they are convicted, a judge said, okay, as penance for your transgressions against society, you are required to do X amount of time in jail. Okay, and that is your repayment to society. We are going to take away all your rights, and we are going to lock you up in this little 6x10 box, and you will do that for X amount of time, regardless of what that time is. Okay, whatever you did warranted that penalty. Now, when you get out, okay, you're released because you have paid that penalty. Well, if you paid that penalty, then why are you still being penalized? Okay.
It's not fair.
No, it's not.
No.
And like I said before with the mental health issue, okay, if a person is such a threat to our society and such a danger to our society that they cannot be trusted to have weapons, then they still need to be institutionalized, okay, whether that's in a prison or a mental hospital. They need to be institutionalized, okay, because they are still a threat, period. And if they are such a threat, then they should be removed from our society.
Yeah, and it's just so true. And it's so unfortunate, Michael, that really across the country, the state legislatures are producing laws that just completely, turn a blind eye to the rights of individuals, which is their Second Amendment rights, their property rights, whether it be a convicted felon or might be someone that has some type of disability. In fact, the gun banners, just to talk about disabilities in general, the gun banners are up, they try to, I think, compartmentalize people and then try to go after their guns. So it's the disabled, the blind, the mentally disabled, pot smokers, whoever it is, they compartmentalize people. Rednecks, they're always like putting like these caricatures out about the regular firearm owner, which by the way is completely false. This isn't true. So you and I are firearm owners, and we have friends who also advocate for firearms, and every single gun owner that I know is absolutely responsible. We're responsible to adults, successful, college educated, things like that. And then, but yet I'm going to be caricatured as some kind of,
backwoods hillbilly.
Backwoods hillbilly, right? And it really, really is unfair, and it's untrue. It's untrue. So I'm going to be looking at this a little bit differently. By the way, I'm going to be looking at it, like you said, about even the mentally incapacitated. Well, if they were so mentally incapacitated, then they're a danger to themselves and society, and they should be removed. They should be in a hospital or, in a facility that can take care of this disability, very serious mental health issue.
Well, that's where they're going to get the help that they need.
Yeah,
okay?
And get the help that they need.
Right.
Right. But
That's
to
where,
consider that all that we have that I have the right to not, well, I don't really like the way you act. Well, I don't think you're a danger to society, but with a firearm, you might be. Who am I to say that? I don't want to take away anybody's freedom. It makes so much sense, Michael.
no,
I like this.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it's plain and simple. Okay, once we start restricting a segment of society, it doesn't matter what segment of society that is. Once we start segmenting it,
Yeah.
and we say, okay, this segment of our society is not allowed to do this. This segment of our society is no longer allowed to do this. This segment of our society is no longer allowed this. Then we literally create an environment where we promote racism, we promote discrimination, we promote classism, we promote all these other things that supposedly everybody is against. But when we segment our society, we create an environment for that very thing to happen. The only way to truly get rid of classism, to get rid of racism, to get rid of discrimination, to get rid of gender problems, okay, where we have gender discrimination, is to quit segmenting our society and give everybody the same rights and have everybody have the ability to act upon opportunities. Okay?
Yeah.
We have a society now that says, okay, this segment of our society, they aren't capable of being able to do this on their own. So we're going to give them a special advantage over the rest of our society. Well,
and that's unconstitutional.
It's not only
you can't give special rights. You can't give special rights according to the U.S. Supreme Court. You can't give special rights to special groups.
Right.
That negates our equality.
That's the key. Okay.
Yeah.
Once you set apart
under the law,
not under the law, it's across the board. It's a humanity thing.
Right.
Once you segment any part of society, it doesn't matter what it is. You either make that segment better or worse than the rest of society. Okay? You either put them into a tiered system where now they get this special treatment. Okay? Look back at the days of the kings or the pharaohs, or throughout our history where we had this type of deal going on. Only if you were of certain bloodlines were you able to receive certain advantages, certain benefits. Okay? If you didn't belong to that bloodline, you were now a peasant or you were a subject of society. We are turning into a society where we are becoming the subjects, and we are having certain individuals and certain groups that are being offset and becoming essentially rulers of our society. And they are dictating, a small segment of dictating what everybody else is allowed to do. And I don't care which line item agenda that you want to take a stand on and take a look at. If you really look at the core of it, it amounts to, we are going to take this segment of society and we are going to separate them from the rest of society and give them either special treatment or we are going to enhance restrictions upon them.
Yeah. Not good, not American, not freedom. No. So it's the opposite. That's right. You know, we want it. It's an excellent point, Michael. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all this information with us. You're very informative.
Thank you.
We are coming down to the end of the show, and I do want to mention two things before we do go. So we have Veterans Day coming up this Friday.
Right.
just want to say I love all the veterans. Mwah!
Yes.
I really do. My brother served in the Air Force my oldest brother for 11 years. And my mom's side of the family, my mom she's deceased, but she's Puerto Rican, and I had uncles, cousins, second cousins. I have a whole group of us in Puerto Rico as my family,
Right.
that's under the American flag. And they do it very proudly, and so it's really important to me and my family. So God bless all the veterans and happy Veterans Day. And that's coming up this Friday.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I'm very humbled at the sacrifices many of our veterans have made in order to maintain the freedoms that we have in this country. I did serve. Okay, I was
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
But thank you. It was an honor to serve. Honestly, it is a part of this country that I wish more people would step up and do. This country is truly outstanding, and the ones that are destroying it are within our borders. And the only way that we can maintain that is to get back to our constitutional roots and get back to where we are looking at individual rights as being the priority in this country, instead of being secondary to government control and individual or control special interests.
Do you think that the American people are going to keep that going? Do you think we have enough support and people that understand these principles and will be willing to fight for them?
I think that is growing over time. Okay. I don't think that we will ever. I think we will always have a certain segment that will always think that government is always the solution. If we did not have that segment in our society, we would not be in the position that we are in now. Even if we go back to when the Constitution was being made and so forth. The Federalists, and this is something that a lot of people do not understand, the Federalists were actually kind of wanting government to be a larger presence and have larger control. It was the anti-federalists that actually set this country into a position where the government was very restricted on what they were allowed and not allowed to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So all the way throughout, we've always had, throughout our history, we've always had a certain segment that wants more governmental control. Okay. So we just have to continue to educate people. We have to have conversations.
Yeah.
I'm not right about everything. I'll be the first one to admit it. Okay. If I was, I wouldn't be in the position I am now. I'd be off on my own doing whatever I want to do at all time. But on that note, together as individuals, we can come up with answers that work for everybody, but we have to have conversations. And the only way to have conversations is by not silencing those that oppose us.
Amen. I like you a lot.
Thank you.
You're going to have to come back on the show another time.
I will definitely do that.
Okay, cool.
I will definitely do that.
So I just want to thank you again very much, Mike. Very nice meeting you. It's really nice to be on board with the First Foundation, contributing there. I already have a couple of ideas. I want to post, get that posted at the website.
Right.
It's really awesome of you to be doing that and starting that group. And I'm going to let you have the last word.
Well, I for one am very proud that you, and very glad that you are a part of our team, our content creation team. We are glad to have you. I see that we have a long road to hoe as the Liberty First Foundation, but I believe that we are making headway and we are going to make a big difference in this country. I appreciate everything that you are doing for the cause of liberty and so forth. Thank you very much. And I've had a great time with this interview.
Oh, you're welcome. Me too. It's great. So I always ask my guests to wave on the show. That I snap a picture, they got everybody waving.
Yep.
Okay? So, talk to you soon, Michael. God bless you, and thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great day.